Beyond efficiency and cost reduction, the world of Web 3.0 technology is the topic of my conversation today with James Hendrickson, President and General Manager of Versus Enterprise. Hello, James.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good, thanks for being with me. So as you know, in recent years, companies, well, at least before the pandemic, were in a cost control mode.
Yep.
Pandemic put them into a panic mode where it was like, what do we needed to do to survive the next day? How can companies begin to reposition themselves through a more strategic lens?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that happens, right, so up until now, just as you said, right, we had this, I think the industry as a whole has sort of felt like we were building these solutions that were all about saving money and making sure that we were driving as much efficiency out of it to justify our existence. Sure. We were a cost center in supply chain rather than a value add or something that's really driving profits for the business. So I think there's a bit of a chip on a shoulder about this, and we are as an industry trying to push past that, find ways to think about it differently, to go, all right, we're no longer tied to how much money we can save, but if we can spend money efficiently and wisely, now we get even more strategic with our investments, and that's where things get really powerful. And that's where we're starting to see some things around next generation technologies like Web 3.0 to be able to go, hey, look, we don't have to justify these things with tried and true proven solutions. We can look at these things and go, all right, we can take some strategic risk because the benefit at the end is really big.
And you feel that top executives in the C-suite are adopting this strategy and this attitude now. They're willing to let their supply chain people and their tech people take this different view of investment and return on investment and the like.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing, but there's also a little bit of almost post-traumatic stress. We have maybe 50 years, 100 years worth of, this is how we've always lived. Yeah. And I see this sort of, this dichotomy almost, the buyers we're talking to, they've been given a mandate that feels unnatural to them because the mandate is, how do we go and be more strategic? What are the things that we can look at that are next generation, that are future facing, that are strategic, but it takes some time to get out of this cost control mode. And so I think it's a really exciting time because of that transition, that liminality of that. We're moving from one phase that has always been a way that it has been to, all right, what does the world of supply chain look like when we start viewing supply chain as the central nervous system of the globe? Yeah. Which I think we've all kind of intuitively known that it was, but we, like the nervous system, we don't actually ever think about it until it stops working. And then we go, whoa, that thing's important. And that's sort of the position we're in right now.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the actual technology that needs to be brought to bear on this. A lot of this technology, new stuff, has been the province of kids and games and stuff like that, but we're talking now about applying it through a more commercial lens. Yeah. And you alluded to Web 3.0. I'm not sure I know exactly what that means, but maybe
I could help you.
Help me understand that, and then talk about how the commercial applications come to the fore.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I'm going to start with, I brought some PTSD into this space. I've been in supply chain tech for 20 years, a variety of different companies, and it feels to me like supply chain adopts technology the absolute last place on the planet. And when they do it pretty systematically and operationally, as you would expect a bunch of supply chain experts to do. But they rarely lead. And partly because of the level of risk that they're dealing with. So the gaming space is a place that you can take those risks because if it fails, you haven't stopped the global supply chain. So what we're seeing now is that willingness to take some of those risks and look at this from what is the next space? What are we going to look at? What is the next internet, if you will? So Web 3.0, you could define it, lots of times people think immediately a blockchain, and blockchain is just a piece of it. It's blockchain plus edge computing plus AR, VR, so augmented reality, virtual reality, with IoT involved in that. So it's bringing together a lot of these next generation technologies that we've heard bits and pieces of. We've heard of NFTs, or we've heard of blockchain, we've heard of AR and VR, but we've not seen it put together in sort of a tech stack, like we've begun to, like we've seen Web 2.0, which has mobile applications and the app economy and the cloud. Right? We can sort of see that as a tech stack, but when that was evolving, none of us, they were just these fragmented tech. And so what we're seeing is that's what's distilling into Web 3 is these technologies that get closer to the edge, because you can use that computing at the edge. It interacts more seamlessly with IoT and is a more immersive computing experience, and lends to the ability to compute in three-dimensional or n-dimensional space, which is a little bit hard for us to get our heads around. The easiest way to think about it is it computes just like the two of us compute, right? I can sense that there's a distance between us. I can sense that there is a distance behind you in the background, and I can do we do a lot of human computing to be able to figure out what that spatial awareness looks like.
Things we don't even think about, and yet
don't even think about it.
Having to build them, we're definitely having to think about them as we build it into our machines.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, there's also this idea of we're still in a time of severe labor constraints.
Yeah.
This technology we're talking about, how can it be brought to bear in a manner that allows employers to do a better job of attracting and retaining talent?
Yeah. So it's funny that before the pandemic and before the labor shortage that we're in now in the US, and I think most of the globe, there was a lot of conversations around the fear of automation or the fear of technology driving out workers and replacing them with machines. You know, the fear that has been there since Ned Ludd and the Luddites, right? Way back, 150 years ago. And right now we're in an enviable spot where we don't have that conversation. When you're looking at automation, it's automation there to bring us back up to the level of where we were pre-pandemic, and to say, all right, well, now we can use the labor that we still have, and we have so much more need that we need the automation just to stay ahead and to stay where we were. So what we're seeing is that the technology of spatial web and being able to see and calculate things in multiple dimensions gets to this sort of a visionary approach that sometimes I like to think of it as Industry 5.0. So we're Industry 4.0. I know. But follow me for a second.
Okay.
4.0. So all of those industry things were about getting rid of the worker. At the end of the day, they were about getting rid of the worker, all the way back to the cotton gin, right? And so moving from getting rid of the worker to moving all the way through. So 4.0 had IoT and all these other sensors. Well, we've reached the point where we've done a lot of that to get rid of the worker. Let's embrace the worker for what they are, and make sure that, because things like a human being has this amazing capacity to grip things, right? And grip a variety of things. Well, let's use that in all the places that we can. We have this amazing inertial computing system that allows us to walk down an aisle without running into things, unless we were out late last night. But those things are hard for a wide variety of robotics to do. They can do them in a niche environment, but if you ask them to do all those things all at once, that's still relatively challenging.
But what they can do is create an environment that is a better environment for the human to work in. Thereby making the job more attractive. Not doing a lot of heavy lifting, you're not doing a lot of walking. What you are doing is something a little more interesting or a little less taxing on you, while the robots are right alongside you.
Okay, I was in a session yesterday, and I actually had, for the first time I think ever, I heard somebody say, I was sort of making an AS400 joke, which, if you've been in supply chain long enough, you know what an AS400 joke is. It's an old one, but one that we still see every day. And somebody raised their hand and said, look, we can't keep our employees because they don't want or know how to use a green screen to input data. And so what their solution was, unfortunately, I think for everybody, was they hired a company to reskin it to make it look like a web app. That's not innovation. That's just trying to drag the old forward.
It's like sticking Windows on top of DOS, is basically what it is.
Who would ever do that?
No, never. Never in a million years. Okay, well, that's pretty exciting stuff going on the technology side, and I really appreciate, James, you're kind of helping me to understand what that is all about and schooling me on the whole concept of Web 3.0. Thanks for that.
You're welcome,
I would like to take a quick moment, though, to have you tell me a little bit about Versus Enterprise. What are you guys all about? What are you up to these days?
So Versus is Versus Enterprise is a subsidiary of Versus, and we're focused entirely on the Industry 4.0, 5.0 sector. So supply chain, warehousing, where the physical world really meets the digital world. And so we look at the larger spatial web. We do computing in three-dimensional space. We have a set of standards that we are working with a nonprofit to bring through the IEEE, so that we have standards that we can use that are open and available to everybody. And we're applying those standards and that capability to be able to compute in three-dimensional space in supply chain. And there is so many examples. One of the first things we've done is built an application that's a bit like Waze or Google Maps for the warehouse, where it's directing the worker through the warehouse about where to go in a visual way. So we see that warehouse and they see where, so it allows those workers to come on board and be productive at a high rate in about 4 hours or less. None of the training time, none of the function key learning. And then as the hardware for things like HoloLens or heads-up displays, as that matures, that same underlying technology can apply either on a handheld or a vehicle mount or on a fully immersive wearable.
Yeah, well, when the worker gets to the pick face where they're supposed to be, you have reached your destination?
Exactly. So really exciting things there, and a lot of next generation things that we're excited to be able to bring to supply chain first.
Cool. James, thank you so much for explaining to me this whole world of Web 3.0 and everything that goes with it. I really appreciate you being with me today.
My pleasure.
That was James Hendrickson of Versus Enterprise. Thank you very much for watching.